Amidst the chaos of the 7-day elemental wars, which wiped out 3/4 of humanity, an orphan child was found on the battlefield and rescued just before he could starve to death. But his mind was already shattered, and he had even lost the ability to speak his own name. Though it was difficult at first, 2 girls began taking care of him, as if he were their very own child, slowly teaching him how to speak all over again. When he was finally able to utter the word Ray, the blonde girl realized he had just said his name, and gently told him her name was Lydia, coaxing him to repeat it after her. But when Carol asked him to say her name, he called her dumb pink, making Lydia burst into laughter, because he already knew how to put that brat in her place. But right then, they both saw him smile, for the very first time since he arrived. Even so, Lydia knew their peaceful days would soon come to an end, since the generals would never allow a child to live among soldiers. But when Carol found out, she started crying out that she would feed Ray, and even take him out on walks. However, when they asked Lydia what she planned to do with him, she noticed Ray was eavesdropping on their conversation, so she decided to let him choose his own path instead. In that moment, he tightly grasped Lydia's hand, telling her that he wanted to stay by her side forever. Hearing those words, Lydia took him on as her sole apprentice, passing her Iceblade Sorcerer divinity down to him. For the next 6 years, the military ruthlessly exploited his unstable powers to level entire battlefields, while Howard trained him to become the coldest super soldier the world had ever seen. Yet, Howard became like a real father to Ray, and even swore that he would gladly give his own life to protect him. But during the final battle of the war, Howard was shot right before his eyes. The sheer trauma of watching his father die all over again began to shatter his mind completely, but it was when he turned around and saw Lydia's lifeless body, his innate ice god powers suddenly awakened, unleashing the forbidden overheat spell, as a massive ice dome completely encapsulated the entire field. Even though Lydia was only paralyzed, Ray visited Howard's grave that night, swearing that as long as he lives, he will never forget his father. 10 years later, on his first day attending Arnold Academy, a snobbish, helpless girl with a remarkably prominent chest was saved from a nasty fall by Ray, who quickly apologized, explaining it was only his first day. But once they realized he was supposed to be the new, ordinary transfer student, she shrieked in absolute disgust, before passing out cold just from touching him. Just then, a guy who looked like he was struggling with a heavy addiction almost punched Ray right in the face just for being an ordinary. But as he tried to throw a punch back, a girl's voice suddenly rang out, telling them to stop. It was Amelia Rose, the daughter of the highest ranking of the 3 noble families, so after all walked away with his lackeys. She warmly congratulated Ray on becoming the very first ordinary to attend their prestigious academy, promising that she would always protect him. During their first class, All's anger only grew worse, furious that an ordinary was sitting among them. Meanwhile, haunting flashbacks of the war began filling Ray's mind, until Miss Gray threw a piece of chalk that exploded right in his face, snapping at him to pay attention. She then explained that in this world, sorcerers are ranked into 5 classes, and only 7 grand sorcerers can exist at any given time. But the strongest one among them, the legendary hero of the elemental war, known as the Iceblade Sorcerer, had completely vanished, after single-handedly defeating the entire eastern continent. As she continued her lecture, everyone wondered why a disgusting ordinary was even among them, especially when they were all striving to become grand sorcerers. But even though everyone agreed with that, Miss Gray made it loud and clear that only those who passed the exam were even allowed to attend, regardless of their noble status. For their very first exercise, Gray explained that there were 4 distinct categories of matter before she began processing the world's fundamental data, until she manifested a beautiful bouquet of crystal roses. This was the very foundation of magic, but right after she wiped them away, a girl wondered if she had used antimatter code. But Gray quickly clarified that absolutely no one in the world was capable of using anti-matter magic. She then instructed the class to start practicing summoning the crystal roses themselves. Amelia easily channeled her powers to bloom a perfect ice rose right in her hand. Ray, however, was only able to summon a pathetic little ice cube, one that looked just as worthless as his face. This made all furiously swear that he'd put an end to Ray's miserable life. The very second class was over. Afterward, Ray followed the supposedly ugly girl into the library, telling her that he was also incredibly interested in Lydia's matter theories, and apologized for not introducing himself sooner. She introduced herself in return as Alyssa, and revealed that she had idolized Lydia her entire life. So when Ray confessed that he loved Lydia from the bottom of his heart, Alyssa's sheer excitement caused her hat to slip off, as she flusteredly apologized for getting carried away. He asked her why she would ever hide such beautiful hair. She quietly admitted that everyone had always bullied her for her half-elf years, but to her surprise, Ray told her they made her look even more beautiful than Aphrodite, as she blushed, completely flustered by how incredibly mature he seemed. He was suddenly reminded of Howard saying those exact same words to him. By the time Ray finally made it back to his dorm, his roommate had been eagerly waiting to meet him all day, introducing himself as Evio Armstrong, and making it clear he wasn't like the rest of those noble snobs, since there was only one thing he truly believed in. And as they shook hands, the sheer power of their grip made them both realize they were exactly the same. So, they instantly ripped off their clothes to show off their Giga Chad muscles, absolutely thrilled to become the ultimate muscle brothers. The very next morning, Ray was out on his 30-mile run, when the sudden gust of wind from his jog nearly blew up a girl's skirt. So, he ran right back and apologized for not running even faster. But surprisingly, she thought it was absolutely incredible that he could run that fast so early in the morning, and introduced herself as Rebecca Bradley. While they were walking to school, Evia revealed that Rebecca was actually the daughter of the second most powerful royal family, but warned him to be extremely careful around her and Amelia. On his way to meet the school principal, another useless brat ran right into him, but this time, she was flatter than a surfboard. So, Ray shamelessly apologized that she had absolutely nothing to cushion her collision. But wait, what did he say next? Actually, he wanted to introduce something much more important, and invited her to check out the sponsor of today's video, Blue Protocol Star Residence, one of the greatest anime-inspired MMORPGs ever made. If you love open-world fantasy, with massive, explorable regions, featuring beautiful, natural environments, and fast-paced, action-oriented combat that takes you deep into dangerous dungeons and perilous zones, then Star Residence is the perfect game for you. And with Season 2 of Star Residence, you can now explore multiple brand new dungeons, with unique mechanics that will put your team coordination and combat skills to the ultimate test. Plus, there are brand new raid encounters, designed for epic group play and massive rewards. With 2 new story arcs, you'll dive straight into an immersive adventure in this breathtaking, fantastical world, all while claiming an exclusive login reward to help both new and returning players get a massive head start. Jumpstart their adventures. Even if you're a new player who wants to experience Season 2, right away, you can jump straight to level 60 and start your journey. At the same time, you'll be able to unlock a new map and explore the sprawling Balmar Highlands, an expansive region with distinct biomes and fresh environments. Dive into the fantastical world of Regnus, customizing your own hero to suit your personality, teaming up for strategic raids, and exploring this massive, ever-expanding world. If you're ready for the bigger map and a world that feels alive, then click the link in my description to download and use the redeem code to grab exclusive rewards. Star Residence is available on both PC and mobile devices, so download now and join me in conquering this beautiful world of Regnus and live out a fantasy that you'll never forget. However, he said that he was glad to meet a charming, pigtailed lady, making her happy that he knew where to look. So she introduced herself as the girl who was loved by pigtails themselves, Clarice Cleveland. Although Ray hadn't ever heard that family name before, the Rizlord said it must be a beautiful family, just by looking at her, and she thought they were going to be close friends. Before remembering that she had to run somewhere, in the principal's office, he bowed down to Abby, as she was his former colonel, but she hoped he would enjoy his normal life here, as she remembered all the times they used to spend together. By the time school was over, Ray prepared to duel against all, and as soon as the match began, Ray parried his sword and forced it into the ground, finishing the match in that instant. However, as all rushed back to eliminate Ray, he struck his sword at the exact angle it would take to break the wood, leaving all to collapse onto the ground. And Abby was glad to see that the Iceblade Sorcerer was enjoying his student life. Later that night, let's go. Alright, let's do this. It's time to show the world what you've got. Wait, what on earth? After practically inhaling each other's protein shakes, Ray revealed that he wanted to join two different clubs. But when Evie thought that would be impossible, Ray revealed that he had a secret plan. In the middle of an ironclad dungeon, a group of massive men were awaiting Ray's arrival. So the club leader and the rest of the guys asked him why he was worthy of joining their environmental research club. All of them thought he was too scrawny and lacked the bulk, but when the leader commanded him to take his clothes off, Ray showed off his ripped body, flexing to show the true extent of his bulk. One of them even joked he was so huge, he'd have to pay property taxes on those ABS, so Ray revealed that he had trained in the backwood forests, showing off his gold hunter license, proving that he's one of the most powerful bulkers alive. So, the leader invited him to join their research club, and all the men started screaming, since their club was basically a madhouse. A few minutes later, Ray entered a room filled with clueless girls, where Rebecca was their leader. He revealed that he was interested in joining their gardening club, because even on the world's deadliest battlefields, he would always find a flower blooming. However, the nastiest girl among them thought Ray was only joining to seduce Rebecca. Seeing how everyone was skeptical of him, and wanting to keep things fair, she decided to let Dina be the one to evaluate his worthiness. On top of their roof, she revealed that his test was to clean this entire space within a single week, and she even wished him luck. But honestly, he thought her ugly face was the one that needed all the luck. Haha. On his very first day, he rolled up his sleeves and started digging up the weeds to clear out the field, all while Dina kept a watchful eye spying on him. Now that the weeds were finally cleared out, Ray began mending the soil, and Evia found herself wishing she was the ground getting thoroughly worked by Ray. Meanwhile, Alyssa was wishing he would sow his seed inside her own fertile garden. By the third day, he started laying the cement canals to build sturdy partitions for the different types of flowers. With all the backbreaking work finally finished, Rebecca showed up to reward him with a fresh strawberry cream pie, mentioning that she had personally negotiated with the school so they could have them, thanks to her status as the student council president. Hearing this, Ray couldn't help but think she was absolutely amazing. Meanwhile, she couldn't take her eyes off his massive biceps, and timidly asked if she could touch them. When he happily let her grab his arms, she was completely blown away, because it was easily the biggest and hardest part of a man she had ever laid her hands on. As he casually explained that he trained in the deep, backwood forests, Amelia watched them from afar. On the fourth day, Ray had completely finished the garden, leaving Dina with no choice but to grudgingly admit he passed. Rebecca then warmly welcomed him to their club. The next day in class, Professor Gray announced that they would be heading out for their practical exercise in the dangerous Kafka forest, and that everyone needed to form groups of 4. Before that could happen, though, Rose was deeply worried that Ray would end up all by himself. But as Ray recalled Abby's warning about a dangerous spy infiltrating their academy, he was left wondering what his next move should be. Just then, Evia walked up and asked to join his group. But when Ray warned her that he wasn't any good with magic, Evia simply smiled and said she didn't mind at all, because his body would make anyone explode. As he looked around to see who else would join their group, he walked up to Alyssa and asked her to join them. But when she said she felt as useless as a toaster, Ray told her that she was exactly the toaster he needed, because he wanted to take a bath with her. After she agreed to join their group, Amelia wondered if they still had an opening for her, but Ray told her he had been planning on filling her opening right from the very beginning. This left all the worthless extras completely shocked, especially the guy who had just gotten back from rehab. Once inside the forest, the teacher explained that they had to reach the center of the woods within 24 hours, while collecting as many stamps as possible from the monsters lurking in the forest. As soon as the signal flare went off, Ray and his group bolted into the forest. But after a few hours of traveling, a monster nearly sliced Alyssa's head clean off before Ray jumped in and saved her. As they quickly got into their battle stances, Ray rushed forward and sliced the giant bee in half with a single strike, earning them their very first stamp. By the time night fell, Amelia couldn't help but wonder where he had learned all of his survival knowledge and his insanely overpowered sword skills, as she started to doubt if he had really learned all of that just in some backwoods forest. However, hearing those words only reminded him that this forest was absolute heaven compared to the brutal battlefield he had survived. He wondered if it was really okay for him to enjoy a peaceful life when all of his comrades had died. When the others noticed his sudden sadness, he quickly brushed it off, lying that he was just tired. A few hours later, while the others slept, Ray stayed awake to keep watch over them, thinking back to his master's words, who had told him to just enjoy living a normal school life, and that he could always reveal the truth, if he could just find people he can trust. The following morning, Ray heard a scream echoing from deep inside the forest, and immediately dashed toward it, using only 40% of his speed to appear like an ordinary student, until he finally reached the scene. There, an rank monster had launched a sudden ambush, and his entire useless squad was already pinned down. But the moment Ray activated his innate code, he effortlessly dodged every single attack, moving far faster than any normal human reflexes could ever handle, leaping high into the air to pierce the beast's brain, killing it in that very instant. But as he sheathed his blade and offered all a hand, the arrogant bastard just slapped his hand away, snarling that he had everything under complete control. So Ray couldn't help but wonder if all had learned some secret strategies during his meetings. Just then, Ray's own group finally caught up to him, but when he asked Alyssa if she could help free those useless morons, Amelia realized that Ray had defeated the monster with a single, effortless strike, making her wonder who he really was. But from the shadows, a mysterious spy threw a dark dagger into the dead monster, resurrecting it from the dead, and instantly evolving it into an S-ranked calamity beast. As it let out a deafening roar, his useless entourage began screaming in terror, but Ray remained absolutely determined to cut it down. At that exact moment, another group of students happened to be walking nearby, but when Clarice heard the monster's terrifying roar, she peeked from behind a tree and gasped in shock, realizing she had never seen a creature this massive in her entire life. Before she could even process it, Ray lunged forward to attack, but as he leapt back, he realized the beast was completely unscathed, and wondered how on earth it could evolve after already dying. As the beast retaliated, he barely managed to block its razor-sharp claws, but just as he prepared to unleash his ice powers, a towering wall of fire burst out of the ground right in front of him, forcing the massive monster to back away. At Amelia's command, Evia hurled a rock toward the creature, and with Alyssa boosting its speed with her wind magic, it struck the monster right in the belly. Before it could even recover, Ray lunged and stabbed it with his sword, refusing to let go until he sliced the beast clean in half, killing it instantly. With the monster dead, the group decided to team up with him. Seeing them all together made Ray fondly remember his old teammates. Meanwhile, Clarice had watched the whole thing, wondering how on earth Ray could be this powerful. At the exact same time, a mysterious spy was also keeping a close eye on him, and realizing that Ray was truly someone special, he vanished in an instant. Within a few hours, the group reached the final checkpoint, and after securing their stamp, Amelia suddenly jumped onto Alyssa and began playfully grabbing her, while Evie wondered if Ray could carry them both too, given his intense wilderness training. By the time the contest came to an end, the instructor proudly announced that their group was the official winner. But even as Clarice cheered them on, she noticed that the other students looked absolutely furious to see Ray outperforming every single one of them. A few days later, Lydia was growing impatient because she hadn't seen Ray in 2 months, but she quickly fixed herself up the moment she heard he was arriving. When he reached the door, a gorgeous maid named Carla welcomed him inside, and Lydia couldn't help but realize that she was the one looking up to him these days. But Ray was just glad she didn't feel the need to kneel before him anymore. As they sat down for breakfast, she warned him that a dangerous organization had been abducting sorcery researchers, and that they were cutting open their brains to extract their hidden magical secrets. She explained that they call themselves eugenics, and warned that they might try to target him next, but warned him never to release his lock unless his life absolutely depended on it. A few hours later, while they were strolling through the forest, Lydia began to wonder if Ray had made any new friends. When he told her that he had found the absolute best group of lovable idiots, she told him to invite them over next time, knowing they must be truly special to make him smile like that. Upon arriving at a massive tree, she told him that the magic sword fighting tournament would soon begin, and, after boasting that she had already won it 4 times, she asked if he would enter. However, Ray preferred to stay out of the spotlight, wanting to keep his powers hidden and cheer on his friends instead. As she pulled a book out from her very ample cleavage, she told him it was written specifically with a student in mind. But when he called her amazing, she begged him to keep saying it, while sighing blissfully. The next day, During his morning run, Ray sprinted past Alyssa, but as her floodgates suddenly gave way, he stopped to help and noticed all the books spilling from her bag. When he asked where she was headed, she told him she was on her way to the library. With nothing better to do, Ray asked if he could tag along, but her floodgates completely failed her right then and there. So, after she changed her clothes to hide the embarrassing spot, Ray couldn't help but think she was adorable, and felt a little jealous of her heart, since it got to be pumping inside her, while he wasn't. Once they were inside the library, Ray helped her pick out a book, and she mentioned it was written by her absolute favorite, magic researcher, Dr. Ainsworth. But as they began reading, Ray made a shocking discovery. Lydia's book was actually a guide full of cheap pickup lines. After leaving the library, he tried out a few of those lines on Alyssa, unaware that Clarice was spying on them from behind a pillar, crying inside, wondering why he had abandoned her so quickly. Just as she started wondering how she would get her man back, Ray suddenly appeared right in front of her, and asked her to join them for lunch. But when she wondered if he was actually asking her out on a date, our resident Giga Chad boldly claimed that he was destroying her floodgates as well. Right while they ate, Ray then went on to introduce Alyssa as his pinky toe, because well, he usually bangs her on a coffee table at night, haha. Then, he introduced Clarice as a girl so beautiful that she literally looks like a work of art, which is exactly why he wants to nail her against a wall. God damn it. So, they spent the rest of the afternoon eating lunch and spending some quality time with Ray, and by the time it was all over, the girls decided to ditch his ugly face. However, the best girl appeared at that exact moment, so he eagerly ran up to her, wondering why she was dressed so beautifully. But she revealed that it was only because of the countless noble events she was forced to attend, and she was honestly getting so tired of them. Still, she quickly apologized for venting to him, but he kindly told her that it's much better if she gets it off her chest. Especially when her chest is well, that heavy and massive. He thought that even Venus itself couldn't compare to her beauty, but after he let slip that Clarice and Alyssa had just left a moment ago, Amelia grew super jealous that he'd been having fun with them, so she commanded him to go to the mall with her instead. Once inside the store, she began trying on different outfits, and Ray started using all his cheesy Discord compliments, even speaking in English. I'd put it to my heart. However, when she started wondering why he was so completely at ease around girls, he revealed that he had never really thought about it before, since he grew up in an environment surrounded by so many women. As she hurried back inside, she couldn't help but wonder why his arms felt so warm. And wondered if she could finally reveal her secret to Ray. Meanwhile, around that same time, Albert was deep in the forest. As he started burning down all the trees, he screamed, vowing to burn Ray's ugly face off the face of the earth. The next day, Ray was busy stretching his muscles, alongside the other bodybuilders. But as soon as they were finished, he made his way over to the gardening club, where Dina handed him a spare key to the clubroom. She explained that the other club members had taken the day off, leaving him in charge for the day. But when Ray stepped inside, he realized the room wasn't as empty as he thought. Oh. Haha. Yes. Wait, my deepest apologies. No. Having caught a glimpse of her plot armor, Ray couldn't help but wonder if she had a thing for bunnies. So, a few minutes later, he decided to apologize, but she flusteredly told him that she usually wears more mature plot armor, begging him to just forget the whole thing. Once they reached the rooftop, Rebecca started showing him the flowers she wanted to plant. But when he asked if she was still upset, she confessed she was just happy to have someone to talk to. After all, none of the other members ever spent any time with her. Since she belonged to one of the three noble families, everyone kept their distance, so she was incredibly glad to have him in the club, especially since he was the only one she could truly talk to. A few minutes later, Ray wondered if there was anyone from the third noble family attending Arnold Academy, but she revealed that the Elgrins only attended Diam Academy. She added that their daughter would be competing in the Magic Chevalier contest, and was the only one who could truly match Amelia's skills. The following day, as Amelia was dueling her arrogant opponent, the instructor revealed that only the winners of each duel would be selected for the sword fighting tournament. So, after Amelia smacked the girl's wooden sword away, even though she was declared the winner, she decided to challenge Ray to a duel anyway. As the two of them faced off against each other, The instructor called for the match to begin. Amelia wasted no time and charged straight forward, but as Ray managed to parry her relentless attacks, he realized she was much faster than he had expected, and quickly leapt back to gain some distance. She couldn't help but call him a mysterious man, wondering how he was so incredibly skilled with his wooden blade, and wanting to feel the full force of his sword clashing against hers. Lunging forward to strike again, she poured every ounce of her strength into her wooden sword, absolutely desperate to land a clean hit. Just then, his master's training flashed through Ray's mind, and as he deflected her blade with ease, Amelia realized it was completely over for her. However, as a sudden surge of Ray's hidden power shocked his own mind, his sword slipped right out of his hand, sending him falling to his knees. At that exact moment, everyone watching was stunned, but the instructor still ended up declaring Amelia the winner. Amelia, however, was convinced that he had let her win on purpose. Replaying his final move in her head, she couldn't help but wonder who he truly was. Later that day, while the group was having lunch together, Evie asked Ray how he had learned such incredible swordsmanship. Ray revealed that he once had a master, explaining that she was the one who taught him everything he knew, from powerful sorcery to master-level sword skills. Right then, Albert suddenly appeared at their table, slamming his hand down aggressively, and demanded to challenge Ray to a duel. Before long, they all gathered at the edge of the forest, where Amelia immediately noticed a massive barrier covering the entire area. She realized that Albert must have cast it to keep this duel a complete secret. Handing Ray a sword, Albert smirked and told him that they were even allowed to use sorcery. But as Albert charged at him, Ray quickly dodged out of the way, instantly drawing his own blade, vowing to destroy Ray once and for all. A menacing purple aura began to ooze from Albert's body, but as he lunged forward, Ray easily leapt back to safety. But all was absolutely furious, and summoned a massive fireball to wipe Ray off the face of the earth. Ever since he was a child, his pathetic parents had been constantly humiliated for ranking at the very bottom of the middle class, and were ignored by the rest of the nobility. This endless shame had fueled his desperate desire to restore his family's name and become a legendary grand sorcerer. Because of that, he truly believed Ray was just a worthless loser who didn't even deserve a spot at this academy. As a dark, inner voice urged him to end Ray's life, he unleashed a volley of fireballs, but Ray dodged them effortlessly. However, when Ray realized that his friends were right in the line of fire, he cut the fireball in half with a single, clean strike, causing it to completely disintegrate. The sight left everyone absolutely speechless, but as all erupted in a raging wall of fire, Ray simply charged right through the flames. Even as that pathetic loser desperately hurled more fireballs, Ray easily dodged every single one before blowing away the last flame. With his sheer, overwhelming power, stunned, all assumed Ray had to be a high-ranking noble. But Ray coldly replied that he was just an ordinary commoner, and bluntly told all that he was simply far too weak. Hearing those words, all completely lost his mind, and summoned his most massive fireball yet. But the moment he unleashed that roaring fire dragon, Ray sliced it right down the middle, dispersing it instantly. The terrifying sight completely shattered All's fragile, pathetic soul, sending him crashing to his knees, as he screamed in absolute despair. When Ray walked back to his friends, Amelia demanded that he finally tell them the truth, but before he could utter a single word, a crushing magical force field pinned them all to the ground, and a mysterious spy emerged from the shadows of the forest. She mockingly declared that they were all going to be living sacrifices. As she pulled back her veil, Ray was shocked to see it was Miss Gray. Determined to put an end to her, he forced himself up and began stepping toward her. Fully realizing she was part of the horrific eugenics group, he promised her that he would protect every single one of his friends. Right then, she decided to reveal her sorcerer's eye. And that's when Ray realized she was the one who evolved the monster in Kafka Forest. The teacher told him, that she had already cast a barrier over this area. She was glad to have the greatest minds in the academy, all in one place, because their brains would make the perfect sacrifice for eugenics. Desperate to stop her, Ray pointed his sword straight at her, but she leapt back instantly, unleashing a swarm of fire snakes. Ray, however, managed to dodge them. As he charged straight toward her, seeing him advance, she redirected her deadly flames toward his friends. Just as time began to slow down, Ray remembered Lydia's words, telling him that he would need to know exactly when to make the call. So, Ray finally released his Chronos lock, casting a massive wall of ice that completely repelled the flames. At that very moment, A cold, bone-chilling aura began to ooze from his body, and after quietly apologizing to his master, he stretched out his hand, instantly summoning a storm of razor-sharp icicle blades. Stunned by the sight, the teacher muttered that it was impossible. After all, the legendary Iceblade Sorcerer was supposed to have vanished after the war, but Ray calmly revealed that the title had been passed down to him. Desperate to end him once and for all, she unleashed a massive fireball, but Ray effortlessly dispersed it with a single swing of his sword. However, when the teacher tried to unleash her causality Draco spell, Ray immediately activated his anti-material code, dispelling it instantly. Gray stood frozen in shock, believing that the anti-material code was nothing but a myth. Step by step, Ray began walking toward her, promising to show her the true, terrifying extent of his power. As pure terror gripped her, she desperately threw fireball after fireball, but they all dispelled the moment they got close. Panicking, she turned and tried to run away, but Ray hurled his ice swords forward, piercing her ankle, sending her crashing flat onto the ground. Terrified that he was going to finish her off, she began desperately begging for her life. But just as she realized that he was actually going to spare her, she made flames erupt violently from the ground. But Ray was completely unscathed by the attack. She stared at him, thinking he must be a monster, and desperately ripped off her necklace, revealing that it was actually a syringe. Determined to activate the Dark Triad system, she plunged it straight into her brain at that very moment. Right then she began transforming into a horrific monster, screaming that this was the power she'd finally awakened after a lifetime of researching sorcery. Suddenly, the barrier began to dissolve, and the spell holding the others faded away. As Ray and Miss Gray clashed, he managed to knock her to the ground. But even when she trapped him in a ring of fire, he blew the flames away instantly. Right after, he summoned his icicle blades once more, leaving the teacher wondering in panic why none of her attacks could touch him. So he calmly told her that his powers came from deep within his own body. But when she launched a massive fireball at him, Ray activated deceleration to slow it down, and using lock registration, he made it vanish into thin air. He explained that his ice sorcery could manipulate deceleration, and with his ability to use anti-material code, he could rewrite code theory itself, easily repelling all of her attacks and breaking them back down into primal matter. Thi's was the true power of the Iceblade Sorcerer. Raising his sword, he activated Material Shift, aiming it straight at the teacher. But refusing to back down, she unleashed her full strength, awakening her mind infiltration sorcery. But Ray just kept slashing right through it, even driving his icicle blades straight into the attack. But right then his powers began to overheat, and ice started creeping across his entire body. Still, he managed to push back the teacher's onslaught, but she had already realized he wasn't in control of his own power, and believed she could destroy him once and for all. As she lunged for another attack, she managed to shatter his blade, but just when she thought it was all over for him, he unleashed his ice bloom perfusion, transforming the scattered ice particles into a freezing tornado, and trapping her inside a massive frozen cone. Exhausted and running on empty, Ray fell to his knees. As he suppressed his overwhelming power, he activated Chrono's lock to seal it once again. At that moment, he saw his friends running toward him. Glad that he had managed to protect them, he lost consciousness and collapsed on the spot. In his unconscious state, he had a vision of Howard walking away, telling him to keep on living, and promising to watch over him from heaven. When Ray finally regained consciousness, he found Lydia waiting anxiously by his side. Fearing she would be disappointed in him, he apologized for breaking his Chronos lock. However, she was incredibly proud of him for using his strength to protect his friends, hoping that one day he would heal from the scars of war, and would no longer even need to use Chronos lock. Realizing his friends were nowhere to be seen, Ray worried that they might have been attacked while he was out, but Abby reassured him that they were just recovering from severe mana depletion. As Lydia got ready to leave, her beautiful maid, Carla, let slip that Lydia had actually been worried sick about him before taking her leave as well. Once they were gone, Abby confessed to Ray that she originally had no intention of admitting him to the academy. She believed he needed time to heal from his traumatic past in the war, but Lydia had begged her to accept him, arguing that he deserved to experience a normal life. Outside, Lydia couldn't hold back her tears, crying out in sheer relief that Ray was still alive. Back inside, Abby revealed that Lydia's ultimate wish for him was to simply enjoy his life at school. And to finally find his own happiness. After she left, his friends came into the room to visit him, and Ray decided to apologize for keeping them in the dark. He confessed that he was actually one of the 7 grand sorcerers, the Iceblade Sorcerer. He explained how he had overheated during the final battle, by losing control of his engram, completely freezing the entire battlefield. By the time he finally woke up, everything around him had been reduced to a desolate wasteland. But Lydia had managed to stop him before he could consume his own life. Even now, he remains bound by the Kronos lock, to keep his powers from overheating again. As they listened to his words, they realized his magic only seemed weak, because it was locked away all this time. Still, he felt deeply guilty for hiding his blood-stained past, and deceiving them, saying, that his hands were forever soiled by the war, wondering if he even had the right to stand by their side. But as he apologized, Amelia gently took his hand, telling him that she wanted nothing more than for him to be right here, because no matter what happened in his past, she believed in the incredibly kind person he truly was. At the same time, Evie spoke up, saying, that Ray was an amazing person and would always be his muscle buddy, and no past would ever change that. Elissa promised that she wanted to be his friend forever, while Clarice thought it was completely pointless, for him to be worrying about any of this, since they would always be friends. And as Amelia drew him into a warm hug, she promised she would never leave his side, and that he would never have to be alone again. At that very moment, the fond memories of Ray's fallen comrades returned to his mind, and he sincerely thanked his friends for staying by his side. Later that night, once everyone had left, all slipped quietly into the room, but Ray was already awake, waiting for him. When Ray asked why he had come, all told him that he was there to apologize, since he had done things he could never take back. But Ray told him that he forgave him, because he found it truly admirable that all had realized his mistakes and was offering a sincere apology. Hearing that Ray had already forgiven him, all finally realized that hating others would never make him any stronger. Instead, he should have just accepted people for who they were. That very night, Amelia realized she might never be anything like Ray, feeling like she'd never amount to anything, just like a bird trapped in a cage. Still, she couldn't help but wonder how Ray wasn't flustered by her gorgeous curves, or if he actually preferred flat boards instead. The following morning, Abby revealed that Miss Gray had left the academy, so the most stunning woman in the entire anime introduced herself as their new teacher, Carolyn. However, Ray felt like he had just plunged into a living nightmare, but Carol was absolutely thrilled to work with them. As she began explaining the details of the magic sword fighting tournament, she revealed that out of the 16 contestants from 3 different academies, their school was allowed to enter 6 students, instead of 5, thanks to their victory last year. She said she was counting on them and gave Ray a playful wink, but the poor guy could hardly believe he was already hitting his limit. However, once class was over, Ray burst into Abby's office, demanding that Carol be fired immediately, since she was the one woman he absolutely couldn't handle. Not only does she make his temper flare up, but she also triggers other intense reactions. And just as her hand started rubbing his back, Ray completely lost control right then and there, but quickly scurried into a corner before they could notice his embarrassing reaction. The following day, as the tournament began, Amelia defeated her opponent in just a few seconds, but as she was walking away, Ray noticed she looked disappointed despite her victory, leaving him to wonder what was troubling her. Just a few days ago, Amelia's father reminded her of her duties as the eldest daughter of the leader of the 3 great houses. He made it clear that she was expected to win the sword fighting tournament and defeat her greatest rival, Ariane. The crushing fear of losing had left Amelia plagued with worrying, and when Rebecca mentioned to Ray that Ariane had been chosen to represent her own academy, Ray realized she must be exceptionally skilled with a blade. The next day, right after Amelia defeated an ugly loser, the instructor stepped up to announce that she had swept all of her matches and secured her spot in the Magic Chevalier tournament. Her friends were absolutely thrilled by the news, and soon realized that all had qualified in second place. But as Amelia turned to leave, the heavy weight of pressure hit her. She simply couldn't afford to lose, knowing how deeply she would disappoint her father. Ray, however, sensed that something was deeply wrong. So, while Evia's gorgeous body lay sleeping, he stayed up all night, poring over Lydia's book. As the sun began to rise the next morning, Ray appeared before Amelia. After warmly congratulating her on making it through the qualifiers, he could tell she was secretly doubting herself, wondering if she truly had what it takes to win. With the tournament only a month away, he offered to train her himself and revealed his book, explaining that it would be the very foundation of their practice. Thrilled at the chance to train just like Ray, Amelia accepted without a second thought, and so, he told her that the training would make her immensely stronger, provided she could actually survive it. That night, she dreamed of the day she first met Ariane, and how they had slipped away together to the balcony, where she happily shared her food with her. Over the years, they grew to become each other's closest friends, and one evening, under a glowing sunset, Amelia thanked her for always playing with her. But Ariane believed that she was actually the one who. She was lucky to have Amelia by her side, and clung tightly to Amelia, asking her to be friends forever. But right after Amelia promised they would always stay friends, the day of their mock battle arrived, and the moment Amelia lunged forward, Ariane dodged her blow and parried her sword away. But when she reached out her hand to help her up, Amelia just stood up and walked away, never saying another word to her again. All this time, the pressure of being a noble had started to consume her, leaving her to believe that to survive, she absolutely had to win. When she arrived the next morning, Ray landed right in front of her, wearing a knockoff Power Ranger mask. He introduced himself as Master White, telling her that he was her new instructor, and ordered her to call him Ranger. For their first drill, he told her that she had to run all the way through the Kafka forest, without using any body enhancement sorcery. So, as they started running, he ordered her to rely purely on her physical strength, but by the time they finished, Amelia was completely exhausted. Even so, he called it an easy first day of training, and warned her that it would only get worse from there. Throughout the rest of that day, Amelia kept dozing off at her desk, and when Evia wondered what was wrong with her, Alyssa revealed that this was all part of Ray's training. He would make her do pull-ups, with heavy weights strapped to her legs, and even push-ups with heavy stones tied to her back. But as she was pushing a giant boulder up the mountain, she nearly isekai'd her miserable life, and realized she was completely drained by the time night fell. Inside her mind, she began to picture Ariane running away from her, but after she collapsed onto the ground, Alyssa picked her up and shoved her right into her massive cannons, and from her right, Clarice held her hand while dressed in a bunny girl outfit. However, Ray started sprinting right toward her, screaming her name, but she woke up only to see that the unhinged weirdo was banging on her window, shouting, "I didn't get any sleep because of you guys, so none of you are sleeping either." After he face-planted onto the ground, Rebecca and Dina cornered him, and Dina demanded to know why his incredibly sketchy face was lingering around the girls' dorm, looking like a total shady weirdo. But to their surprise, Ray proudly declared he was just doing the Ainsworth-style wake-up call to get Amelia out of bed. Right at that moment, he spotted her trying to sneak away, and immediately bolted after her. But even though she managed to lose him, he stood there wondering where she could have gone. That was when he spotted All, and demanded to know where the rest of his pathetic little squad was. However, All weakly groaned that he was fighting for his life against training withdrawals. Not wasting any time, Ray scanned the entire campus, and easily locked onto her exact position. Meanwhile, Amelia was hiding under a desk, utterly exhausted and completely over this brutal training. But as Ray crept up behind her, he casually mentioned that he'd used his magic solely for the purpose of tracking her down. Panicking, she quickly tried to play it cool and claimed she was just meditating. Unfortunately for her, as he dragged her away to resume the training, Amelia realized she was completely and utterly doomed. Later that night, Ray asked the Environmental Science Club to serve as Amelia's personal cheering squad, believing they'd easily become the loudest cheerleaders possible, thanks to their ridiculously massive physiques. Hearing this, Abby could only think that since these guys had nothing better to do with their lives anyway, these unhinged meatheads finally found a way to scream like absolute maniacs, without any judgment from society. The very next morning, Evie woke up after hearing a girl close his door, but he decided not to look into it. Meanwhile, Amelia had already started running on her own, and Eliza told her that she had just broken her previous record. At that very moment, a random girl walked by, saying that Amelia was absolutely impressive, though they all wondered who she really was. However, Ray was just glad he managed to stay completely unnoticed, and hoped that his plans would work out perfectly. Later that day, after sneaking into Dion Academy, he decided to hide inside a cardboard box, but after noticing a helpless, crying girl calling out for her sister, he popped out of the box, thinking he had just found the perfect cover to get into the school. When he asked why she was crying, she told him that she couldn't find her sister. So, offering to help her look, he introduced himself as Lily. When the girl told him her name was Tiana Algren, Ray realized she was actually Arian's sister. As they walked through the school grounds, all the students began wondering who this absolute stunner of a girl was, knowing for sure she didn't belong there. But right at that moment, Tiana spotted her sister sitting at a table nearby. Once Ray walked her over to the table, Ariane thanked him for bringing her sister back, and introduced herself. However, she quickly realized that he wasn't actually a student from their school, and demanded to know who he really was. As expected of Lady Ariane ... to think you'd see right through me. Ray then told her that he was from Arnold Academy, but as Ariane began to wonder how he managed to change his voice and physical build, he explained that he did it using internal code and sorcery. At that moment, she realized she had already heard rumors about him ... and thought he was just an ordinary guy. But just as she was about to ask how she could repay him, he suddenly challenged her to a friendly duel. So, a few minutes later, as they faced off in a mock battle, Ray was hoping to see what she was truly capable of. As she lunged forward, trying to disarm his wooden sword, Ray realized just how incredibly fast she was. With a graceful spin, their blades clashed once more, but using a clever distraction, she unleashed a bolt of lightning into the sky, sending Ray's shattered sword flying out of his hand. Genuinely impressed by her skills, Ray warmly told her she was incredibly strong. Afterward, as they walked out of the courtyard, she asked if he would be entering the upcoming tournament, but he shook his head, saying he wasn't, and confidently told her that Amelia would defeat her in the sword fighting tournament. Later, on his way back to the academy, he spotted a gorgeous, white-haired girl running away in a panic, but as she tripped and began to fall, he dashed forward and caught her just in time. In that exact moment, the girl felt her heart skip a beat and instantly fell in love, but as Ray helped her back onto her feet, he told her to be careful, teasingly adding that even though roses were red, her hair was a stunning, pure white, so he couldn't help but want to sweep her off her feet and show her a wild, unforgettable time in his room. But just as he turned to walk away, the girl eagerly asked for his name. So, Ray introduced himself as Lily, and the girl introduced herself as Maria Bradley. He instantly realized she had to be Rebecca's sister, but Maria, completely smitten, declared she no longer had any doubts about attending his academy, and begged him to wait for her until next year, before happily running off. Meanwhile, over at Arnold Academy, Amelia was absolutely exhausted from another brutal day of training, but just as Ray appeared on a nearby wall, praising her for all her hard work, they suddenly noticed a mysterious girl standing right before them. Just as they started to wonder how she was speaking, in Ray's voice, Ray revealed that it was actually him all along. But the sheer shock of that realization made the girls completely burst into tears. A few days later, they arrived at Lydia's home. But when Lydia started wondering if Ray had grown a bit taller, this time, he told her to worrying about her own weak, fragile legs instead. Ouch! As he went on to introduce his friends, Lydia was absolutely thrilled to meet them, and she even agreed to sign Alyssa's book. Once the girl realized that Lydia was actually her favorite sorcery researcher. However, while Lydia went to speak with Amelia in a private room, Carla pulled Ray into the kitchen. Once inside, she warned him that another secret group, called the Grim Reapers, had been plotting an attack. She suspected they were planning to strike during the sword fighting tournament, so Ray promised to keep a close eye on his friends. Meanwhile, back in the room, Lydia gently asked Amelia what was weighing on her mind, revealing that Ray had been deeply worried about her, and that he'd been sending a ton of letters, desperately trying to figure out how to make her happy. She knew Amelia was holding back her true talent, and although Lydia felt she had been able to teach him almost everything, she could never quite teach him how the human heart works. He was just a broken child when they first found him, and, since he'd been surrounded by nothing but soldiers his entire life, she was so glad that, for the first time, he finally had real friends by his side. She told Amelia that Ray was truly worried about her, and that, if she genuinely wanted to change her life, She needed to open up and trust her friends, and that she could absolutely trust Ray. Once they were finished talking, she playfully told everyone to change into their swimsuits, since they were all going for a late-night swim. Abby thanked him for inviting her to meet his master, but even though Ray wished Abby hadn't shown up with Carol, Evie thought it was definitely an experience worth having, the absolute greatest climax of his entire life. Why? Because, even though all of the girls had already arrived at the pool, and Clarice was super jealous of Ulysses' massive cannons, Carol had shown up completely wasted to the party, and she activated a spell to dissolve everyone's swimsuits. The next day, Amelia began her running drills, and Ray couldn't help but think that she's definitely gotten a lot stronger. So, after they entered the forest, he drew his sword and challenged her to slice the rose right off his chest. Noticing her hesitation, he told her that he truly believed in her strength. Fired up, she finally decided to draw her sword and charged straight at him. A few days later, just as the sword fighting tournament was about to begin, Abby announced the official start of the event. Backstage, inside the arena tunnel, Ariane appeared before Amelia and offered her hand, saying she'd be waiting to face her in the finals. Though Amelia wondered if she could actually beat her, she decided to take her hand and shake it anyway. In the semifinals, Amelia faced off against a weak, ugly loser. As the match was about to begin, Abby laid out the rules, explaining that the only way to defeat their opponent was to knock them out cold, or to completely destroy the rose on their chest. The moment Abby gave the command to start, the loser charged straight at Amelia, but as he swung his blade, trying to slice her up, she easily vaulted over him to the other side. When he tried to turn around and charge again, a tiny burst of flame erupted from the ground, instantly burning his rose to ashes, as Abby proudly declared Amelia the winner. You see, right when the match began, Amelia had already set a trap by burying an active spell deep in the ground, and after baiting the loser to that exact spot, her hidden trap triggered perfectly right on cue. At that exact moment, Ray quietly decided to leave the arena. He met All inside the waiting room and told him it was finally his turn to fight. As All took the rose from him, he started heading out toward the arena floor. His opponent was Ariane. The moment Abby commanded the duel to begin, they rushed at each other, their swords clashing violently. But Ariane quickly repelled him with her sorcery, sending All crashing hard onto the ground. Yet, even as she demanded his surrender, he remembered Ray's words, who had told him that admitting his own weakness was the only true way to grow stronger. Refusing to back down, he declared he would never give up, as he charged straight at her. This time, he actually managed to send her sword flying. But just as he thought victory was within reach, she unleashed her sorcery, trapping his blade in its tracks. While he stood frozen in utter shock at her overwhelming power, she snapped his sword clean in half and blasted him with a blow that sent him flying. Tossed right out of the ring, All could only watch as Ariane was declared the winner. Looking up, All could only marvel at how beautiful the sky was, but Amelia was left desperately wondering how on earth she was supposed to defeat Ariane. Meanwhile, Ray was patrolling the arena's underground tunnels, unaware that a mysterious creature had just slipped past his gaze. But as a dark, ghostly shadow tried to sneak up on him, it suddenly vanished into thin air. And the environmental club captain stepped out of the shadows. His name was Lex. As Lex led him into a private meeting room, Ray realized that the ladies had been waiting for him. But when he noticed the masked men guarding them, he couldn't help but wonder who they really were. Carla revealed that they belonged to the Hale family, explaining that their bloodline was responsible for running the kingdom's entire intelligence agency. At that moment, Carla also revealed that Lex was actually her brother. Just then, Abby spoke up, warning everyone that the Grim Reapers had successfully infiltrated the tournament. She explained that their goal was to abduct the daughters of the most prominent noble houses for their own dark purposes. She warned Ray to keep his guard up, and Lex promised to back him up if the enemy decided to strike that night. As Ray stared out the window, he knew deep down he had to protect Amelia from the coming danger, and vowed to stop the Grim Reapers from interfering with the tournament. Meanwhile, Amelia sat alone in her room, consumed by sadness, terrified that she wouldn't be able to defeat Ariane. The next day, as Alyssa and Clarice arrived at the arena, they revealed that Amelia was too terrified to even show up, and they were deeply worried that she was starting to completely doubt herself. Just then, they noticed a guy who had won his match in just 2 seconds. setting a brand new record for the fastest victory in history. But as he turned to leave, his eyes locked onto Ray, and as a heavy silence fell over the entire arena, Ray realized this guy was no ordinary student. That night, while Ariane was deep in her training, she unleashed a powerful kick on a punching bag, followed by a devastating blow. And as she anchored her foot firmly into the floor, she delivered a punch so intense that the bag exploded. At that moment, her father walked in and coldly remarked that he was proud to see her beating up a defenseless bag, hoping she would crush Amelia just as mercilessly. Ariane quietly assured him that she would win. Meanwhile, Ray was busy training in his underwear with Evia, because, well, they were totally straight. But when Evia noticed that Ray's mind was completely elsewhere, he told him to just go and see her. So, Ray rushed over to the girls' dorm, and standing outside Amelia's door, he called out to her, begging her to listen to what he had to say. He confessed that when they first met, he was terrified of getting too close to her heart, so he kept running away. But now, he wanted to know the pain she was burying deep inside, and declared that he was finally ready to reach her heart. As those emotional words left his mouth, she slowly opened her door to let him inside. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that she was completely hopeless, and admitted that her entire life had been nothing but a struggle to live up to everyone's expectations. She had tried and tried her entire life, but compared to Ray, she felt like all her efforts were completely worthless. But then, Ray gently told her that there was absolutely no point in comparing their pasts. He assured her that he knew just how hard she was trying. Even so, Amelia still believed that her only chance of proving her worth was to win her upcoming duel, but she felt there was simply no way she could ever beat Ariane. No matter how much time passed, Amelia felt stuck, and even began to wonder why she was even alive, if she could never hope to catch up to her. In her despair, she asked Ray what the true meaning of her life even was. Ray told her that just being alive didn't carry any inherent meaning, but he pulled her close and told her that their reason to live was something they could build together, side by side, sharing her joy, her sorrow, and crying and laughing with her friends. That was what truly gave meaning to their lives. Then, he got down on one knee and told her that he wanted to spend the rest of his life right by her side. Is it really okay for you to be by my side ... and stay? Yes ... because that's who you truly are, the real Amelia Rose. All through the night, she held his hand tightly, refusing to let him leave. So, he stayed right by her side, remembering the time they had sparred in the forest. Back then, when he leapt in to deliver the final strike, she had awakened her butterfly magic, instantly burning his rose to ashes, and even shattering his mask. That single, desperate act made Ray truly believe that she could defeat anyone. He looked at her and said he believed in her with all his heart. The next day, when Ray arrived at the arena, Alyssa asked him if Amelia had fully recovered, but when he told her she was doing fine, and casually mentioned he had spent the entire night in her room, the girls immediately assumed their relationship had taken a huge step forward. All through the night, as Ray headed off into the tunnel, Evia couldn't help but think that Ray had finally become a real man, but secretly wished he was the one who got to feel those incredible muscles. A muscular, veiny arm ... I mean ... a muscular, veiny arm. Before long, Ray found Amelia inside a room, and she hugged him for good luck. But after she entered the arena, Lex suddenly appeared behind Ray, telling him that 8 students had been abducted ... and revealed that Clarice was one of them. As Ray heard these words, he told him that he would search the underground. At the same time, Amelia and Ariane were facing off, and as Ariane told her to surrender, Amelia vowed to defeat her. Confident she would win, Ariane flung her sword and awakened her lightning sorcery. But as she launched the blade at Amelia, she teleported right behind her, landing a punch that sent her flying yards away. However, as Amelia managed to stand, Ariane flashed towards her, landing another blow that nearly forced her off the podium. But as she jumped to deliver the finishing blow, Amelia awakened her butterfly sorcery, overwhelming Ariane in the explosion. However, she managed to retreat unscathed, but Amelia told her that she would never lose to her. Meanwhile, Ray was running through the underground, and as he spotted the abducted students, he decided to wake up Clarice. But at that moment, they noticed an interference barrier, and Ray told Clarice that the enemies were trying to trap them there. As he discovered they were surrounded, he realized they must be the Grim Reapers. So, carrying her over his shoulder, he immediately began running away. He activated Chrono's lock and summoned his icicle blades. But as he began fighting off the enemies, Claris thought she was on a roller coaster. But with a snap, they caused darkness to surround them. So, Ray cast an anti-material field that destroyed their spell, and even cancelled Amelia's butterflies. At the same time, the enemies tried to retreat, but Ray stabbed the ground, trapping them in ice and freezing them instantly. Just as Lex arrived at that moment, Ray told him that they weren't dead, and began running toward the arena floor. Meanwhile, Amelia and Ariane were already exhausted, but Ariane told her she was ready to reveal her greatest sorcery. Realizing her power had increased, Amelia tried directing her butterflies toward her, but Ariane swooshed out of the way, and just as Amelia noticed she was behind her, Ariane knocked her away with a single blow, but she managed to regain her balance. In an instant, Ariane flashed behind her, dodging all her butterflies, and landing a powerful blow that sent her flying 25 feet high, leaving everyone shocked. Even so, Amelia wouldn't surrender and tried to get back up, but realized that every bone in her body was already weak. She thought she was going to lose, but the memories of her friends began flashing across her mind, along with Ray's words that he would stay by her side forever. Amelia, save Emmy. She told Ariane that she could never reach her again, activating her butterfly effect. As Ariane flashed toward her and was about to land a blow, Amelia disappeared right before her eyes, nearly making her stumble. However, as she regained her balance, she spotted Amelia right in front of her and tried to attack again, but was easily repelled. Amelia said that she couldn't touch her, and Ray realized that her sorcery was concept interference, a special technique that was only awakened in less than 0.0001% of all humans. By manipulating causality, Amelia could completely override Ariane's attacks right before it happens, making her completely invincible to any physical attack. Realizing Ariane was growing exhausted, Amelia told her to surrender, but she declared that she would never quit. As she lunged forward to attack once more, Amelia reactivated her butterfly effect, parrying her entire body, as a butterfly exploded right before her eyes. But at that moment, Amelia noticed her nose was bleeding, as her body was starting to get overwhelmed by the sheer power of the sorcery. Ray thought she was starting to overheat, but Amelia was absolutely determined not to lose. However, Ariane revealed that she had no intention of losing either, and they charged straight at each other. But as another butterfly exploded, Ariane managed to land a clean kick. But as Amelia tried to burn her face off, she realized that Ariane had managed to block the attack. As they clashed using the exact same moves, they even tried to headbutt each other, but both of them could barely even stand. By the time Ariane finally regained consciousness, she realized that Amelia had won the fight. But Amelia was just so incredibly happy to see her alive. Ariane softly told her that she had grown so much stronger. But Amelia shook her head, saying she's only managed to get better, because she was desperate to finally reach her level. Hearing this, Ariane finally decided to confess that she had strived so hard to become the perfect noble, just so she could lead her lifelong friend by example. Amelia realized that her friend had been struggling all this time, completely for her sake too. Deeply moved, she pulled her into a warm hug, and Amelia remembered holding her in the exact same way, back when they were children. The memory brought tears of joy to her eyes, and Ariane gently congratulated her for winning the fight, whispering that she was the true champion. At that very moment, Dina officially announced that Amelia was the winner, and as Ariane proudly raised her hand in victory, Amelia's worthless father actually had the nerve to applaud them. Later that day, as Ray visited Amelia in the infirmary, she remembered his promise to stay by her side forever, and started saying that she liked him, but she quickly added that she wasn't thinking about becoming his girlfriend, or anything like that. You dummy. Don't you find that just a little suspicious? When she wondered if he had already figured out that she possessed hidden inner powers, he told her that he had only sensed a tremendous surge of energy inside of her during their training. He was just glad that all her hard work had paid off, and said it was living proof that she had been working tirelessly to push her body to its absolute limits. Warmly congratulating her on her victory, he then reached out to shake her hand, and Amelia felt incredibly grateful to have met him, realizing that his unwavering support had helped her unlock her hidden powers, and finally accept the heavy burden that comes with her noble position. The very next day, as Dina announced the start of the final duel, Rebecca and that mysterious guy faced off. His name was Lucas, but as Rebecca activated her golden eyes and readied herself for the fight, Lucas took just a single step, unleashing his 8 secret technique and casting absolute darkness all around her. He sliced her rose before she even realized what was happening, ending the match in a flash with afterglow blackout. The shocking sight left the entire arena completely stunned, and as he calmly sheathed his sword, everyone realized the fight had ended almost as soon as it began. As Dina announced him as the champion, Lucas immediately turned to leave. However, when he crossed paths with Ray in the tunnel, Ray questioned why he had even entered the contest, knowing that he was the peerless Blade Sorcerer and had absolutely no business competing in a student tournament. But Lucas coldly told him that he had entered on purpose, just to reveal himself, and said he wanted to challenge him in the next tournament, to prove that the peerless Blade is way stronger than the Iceblade Sorcerer. He hoped that Ray would be fully recovered before their duel, and even suggested he fix his overheating issue before the next tournament. Meanwhile, down in the underground, Abby led the girls into a secret room, revealing the captured Grim Reapers. As Carol called for their attention, she snapped her fingers, trapping them in a powerful charm spell. The moment she started giving orders, they mindlessly followed her every command, making Abby think her mind-controlling magic was absolutely disgusting. However, Carol ordered them to spill all their plans and secrets, teasing that she'd let them do whatever they wanted to her. Honestly, I would do absolutely anything to be in their shoes right now. Hey, stop it, get some help. But the moment they heard those words, their brains literally exploded. And that wasn't the only thing. And Abby realized that the enemy must have anticipated this. A few days after the tournament, Ray suggested that the class run a maid cafe for the upcoming cultural festival, but the students thought he had completely lost his mind. They immediately reminded him that they're nobles, and said there was no way they'd pretend to be maids. You see, the day before, Amelia had asked Ray to convince the class to set up a maid cafe for the festival, claiming that a maid represents the pinnacle of loyalty, carrying the gentle vibe of a caring goddess. With regal elegance, hearing those words, he immediately pictured Carla's heavily blessed maid outfit, and realized she had a solid point. But Amelia wanted the maid skirts to be even shorter. And man, this girl really gets it. Believing her plan was absolutely flawless, he began pitching the idea to the students that those maid outfits would completely revolutionize their school. Right at that moment, Carol thought they would all look incredibly cute in maid outfits. Not gonna lie, pulling that off was going to be pretty tough. Honestly, after they had finally agreed, Ray told Amelia that her plan had worked out perfectly. But just as Dina showed up at that moment, she told them that Rebecca must have been hypnotized by some kind of love spell, because she was suddenly engaged to some random guy. A few days earlier, a man had signed a blood contract with Rebecca's father, promising to protect her from any kind of threat. But at that exact same time, a giant was literally draining the life force out of a man. Once he was finished, he decided to just dump the body. But as a mysterious sorcerer arrived right at that moment, he revealed that he only came to claim the brain. He also planned on capturing Rebecca, having recently discovered that she was the perfect vessel to awaken an ancient demon. The following day at school, when Ray ran into Rebecca, he decided to congratulate her on her engagement. But the moment he held her hand, he could tell that she was absolutely terrified. A few hours later, when Ray arrived at the classroom, he realized that the guys were busy setting up a lovely cafe. And I'll let him know that his deep desire to see the girls in maid outfits had completely rubbed off on them. Evie even told Ray that he had an amazing eye for the future, saying that his passion had united all the boys. Al then told Ray that there wasn't a single man on Earth who didn't love maids. A few minutes later, when Ray arrived at the gardening club, he noticed that all the other members were missing, and began wondering where on earth they could be. Deciding to finally reveal the truth, Dina told him that they had all resigned from their positions, and Rebecca confessed they had only left because of her sudden engagement to her new fiancé. She was originally engaged to another member of the club, and the news that she had taken the other girl's place as the new love interest had made everyone think she was a betrayer. Hearing these words, Ray realized that Rebecca and Dina must be pushing themselves too hard, so he offered to help them out. And since Rebecca realized he would actually be quite useful, she accepted his help immediately. However, just as Ray was about to leave, Dina rushed over to him and confessed that Rebecca's engagement seemed incredibly strange after all. Rebecca acted as if she was desperately trying to hide a secret, and, with her fiancé not even being from one of the top 3 houses, she was terrified that Rebecca might be in grave danger. So, when she begged him to keep an eye on her, Ray agreed, promising to protect her. That night, at Lydia's house, Ray decided to ask if they had uncovered any secrets about Rebecca's engagement. Since Lydia also found the situation highly suspicious, she ordered Carla to look into it and find the truth. Just as Ray was getting ready to leave, Lydia decided to ask what his friends were planning to do for their cultural festival. When Ray mentioned that they were planning to set up a maid cafe, Lydia couldn't help but wonder who would actually be interested in something like that. However, Ray simply repeated all's words, telling her that not a single living soul could deny the beauty of a maid. So, when Lydia jokingly asked if he felt the same way, he admitted that he did, confessing that he absolutely loved Carla's outfit as well. Shocking Lydia completely, he added that when Amelia first suggested hosting a maid cafe for the cultural festival, his mind had immediately drifted to Carla's hot body, making him realize that a maid cafe was the absolute perfect idea. Hearing these words, Lydia thought she could also put on a maid outfit and look even hotter in her wheelchair. Okay, that was definitely a violation. Personally, I wouldn't stand for that. Ray apologized immediately, terrified she'd turn him into an ice statue. Meanwhile, in the girls' dormitory, Rebecca was taking a shower, and Ray's memories of the Far East War were flashing through her mind. She wondered why she was having his memories, but decided to head back to her room. As she opened her sorcerer's eyes, she began wondering what was happening to her, but right at that moment, her sister appeared. Noticing that Rebecca was bleeding, Maria demanded to know what had happened, but Rebecca just told her to go back to sleep, saying she would recover on her own. But once she got back to her room, she grew incredibly sad and began to cry. The next day, as the girls got dressed up in their maid outfits, Amelia stood before Ray. Seeing her stunning figure, he told her that she just turned the 206 bones in his body into 207. Just then, Amelia showed off Eliza, and as Ray started to say that he could give her a broomstick to hold on to, Amelia cut him off with a solid punch, shouting that she wasn't about to share him. Then, Clarice suddenly materialized behind him. She told them that her class was doing a haunted mansion for the festival. She felt like she looked ugly and could easily pass for a real-life ghost. But Ray told her she was way uglier than that. Talk about emotional damage. Even though he thought this was already the perfect maid cafe, he knew he could still push it even further. Later that day, Ray decided to walk Rebecca home, and she told him that she would be moving out of the dormitory once the school festival was over. Seeing that she needed to get ready for her new life as a wife, her fiancé suddenly appeared right in front of her. His name was Evan. After thanking Ray for escorting her, he decided to take her home. But as Ray watched them walk away, he couldn't help but remember what Dina had told him earlier, warning him that Amelia was in serious danger. But before he could act, Lex stood right in front of him. Before long, they arrived at a secret meeting, where Carla revealed that Evan was holding Rebecca captive inside an abandoned house. Lydia suspected he was after Rebecca's sorcerer eyes, and as everyone realized she was probably right, Abby pointed out that he must be a member of the eugenics. Meanwhile, at that very moment, the mysterious sorcerer stepped out from the darkness, and as he announced that the gates of Akasha would finally open, once Rebecca awakened as the cruise, he reached up and removed his mask, revealing himself to be none other than Evan. But just a few hours earlier, when he had tried to extract Rebecca's eyes, she had slapped his hand away, but he only sneered, telling her that her own father had signed a contract with him, trading her eyes away to secure a position at the very top of the 3 great noble houses. He told her that resisting was completely useless, and warned her that her sister would be sacrificed in her place instead. As Rebecca began to weep, she suddenly found herself pulled into a vision of the past, standing right in the middle of a battlefield. There, she spotted Ray, and realized he was desperately trying to resurrect Howard. But Lydia slapped him hard across the face to snap him out of his despair, reminding him that they were still in the middle of a war zone, before dragging him away. The next day at school, as these memories flashed before her eyes, she began to wonder if Ray was indeed the boy from her vision. Later that day, in the garden, Ray ran into Maria, and as she introduced herself as Rebecca's sister, it was clear she thought he was totally out of line. Completely out of line, honestly. But she didn't care about his charm at all, and poured a liquid as white as her own hair. She told him that she had only come to talk about her sister, because she was deeply worried about her. Noticing her sadness, Ray gently took her hand, promising her that he would protect Rebecca with everything he had. As his reassuring words made her heart race, Maria rested her head gently against his chest. But Rebecca spotted them from around the corner. As she tried to fall asleep that night, the painful memory kept flashing before her eyes, and she couldn't help but wonder if her sister was trying to steal her crush away. Meanwhile, that same night, in Ray's dream, he was reliving the memory of Howard's burial, and was trying to hold Carol close, hoping to comfort her. But at that very moment, he realized Rebecca was right there inside his dream. As she wondered who he truly was, he tried to tell her the truth, but a sudden clap of thunder roared, completely drowning out his voice. When he finally woke up, he wondered if he had just imagined Rebecca being there. But then, blood began to trickle down from his eyes. The next day, when he ran into Rebecca, he told her that he had never experienced a school festival before. But, just as she was about to ask if he had fought in the Far East War, she decided to let it go. Soon, on the first day of the cultural festival, Amelia served cakes to Ariane and Tiana, drawing a heart shape on them with ketchup. But Ariane was only interested in finding Ray. When Ray finally arrived disguised as Lily, everyone was convinced she must be a supermodel. But he knew he had to pull this off flawlessly. Like the professional he was outside of school. Meanwhile, Carol was sad that she was stuck guarding the building, because she had some mischievous plans in mind for Ray. While he served Maria her food, she was practically about to lose her mind. So Lily went ahead and activated her ultimate ability. How on earth is a guy the best girl? Even Amelia thought he looked absolutely terrifying as a girl. But Ariane couldn't help but wonder what kind of terrifying situation she had just walked into. A few hours later, as Rebecca hesitantly walked right next to Ray, she gathered the courage to grab onto his arm. As they spent the whole day having fun together, just like a real couple, even when Clarice tried to scare them, Ray told her not to be afraid of such a pathetic and disgusting ghost. By the time the sun was setting, Ray was about to leave, but as she was about to bring up the fireworks show that was happening tomorrow night, she decided to stop herself and quietly walked back into her room. At sunset, as Maria was leaving the school, a mysterious woman suddenly appeared before her and warned her that Rebecca would soon be killed. At the same time, Abby revealed the exact same news to Ray, but Lydia assured him that they could still rewrite her future. Right then, Rebecca's father arrived and confessed that he was the one who put Rebecca's life in danger, so he desperately begged him to save her. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the sorcerer revealed that his plans would set in motion the very next day, knowing that Cruz would soon be awakened. But the giant glutton made it clear that his only desire was to completely devour Ray's soul. The following day, as Rebecca met up with Ray, she told him that she had been waiting for him and asked him to look after her sister. Knowing she was now engaged, she felt it was only a matter of time before she disappeared forever, and begged him to protect Maria. So, on the second day of the festival, Ray disguised himself as a girl once more and tried his best to distract Maria. But she was just too worried about her sister and decided to ask for his help. Meanwhile, outside, Rebecca was walking down an alley. But just as Evan appeared right in front of her, they instantly teleported away. At the same time, Maria decided to leave. But Amelia couldn't help but wonder how Ray managed to fall for someone with such an ugly face. Completely ignoring her own useless one, Ray suddenly decided to run off, leaving his friends wondering what could possibly be wrong. On the far side of the forest, Evan cast a massive barrier over the entire area and told Rebecca he was finally ready to take her eyes. Meanwhile, Ray had begun carving his way through the monsters, but wondered how many he could actually take down with only his inner code activated. But just as the sorcerer launched a fireball toward him, it instantly dispelled. And that's when Ray noticed Amelia's butterfly effect. At that moment, he realized his friends had followed him there. As Amelia told him they were there to support him, Ray slashed through a monster, while Evia sent several sorcerers flying up into the sky. All unleashed a torrent of fire on them. At the same time, Alyssa whipped up a massive tornado to sweep the monsters away, while Clarice cast lightning to completely obliterate them. As Amelia rushed toward a beast, she used it like a trampoline to launch herself 50 meters into the sky, before activating her butterfly effect. However, Ray jumped in to protect her at that exact instant. Sensing that Ray was running low on Prima material, the mysterious sorcerer ordered him to go support Evan, so he began running up the mountain, confident they could handle the sorcerer on their own. All told Ray to go find Rebecca, so he ripped off his disguise. Thank you. The previous day, when Rebecca's father had asked for his help, he had told him that Evan was a curse upon their bloodline, and her father warned him that she would die if the cruise took over her body. Serving as the vessel for the cruise during Rebecca's birth had caused Maria to be born as an albino, and he was terrified that even Maria might become another vessel. But Ray hoped to reach them in time. Meanwhile, the glutton and the sorcerer landed inside the barrier, but as the mask disintegrated, revealing Evan's face, the fake Evan transformed into a mysterious lady. Her name was Liz, but the moment Evan saw her face, he bound her with dark sorcery, snarling that the sight of her pathetic face had haunted his memories for years. Evan declared that he wanted to kill her right then and there. She had impersonated him, living his life for more than 10 years, just to protect Rebecca's family from his schemes. He believed that killing her would finally let him open the gate of Akasha by using Rebecca's body as his vessel. But before he could lay a hand on her, Liz snuffed out his flames and materialized right in front of Rebecca. She told him she wouldn't let him take her and teleported her away to safety. Then, aiming her hand at him, she banished him to another dimension. Just then, Ray leapt through the barrier, but the glutton, thrilled at the chance to finally devour his engram, was hungry to consume his life force. The glutton charged at him, only to slam into a barrier. At that moment, Liz introduced herself to Ray, revealing that she was the sorcerer of fabrication. She explained she would cause Rebecca to overheat, but asked him to seal her powers afterward. After all, he was the only sorcerer capable of controlling Chronos' lock, and she added that his soul resonated with hers. This connection was the very reason they shared those dreams. And with that, she pointed out that Ray's eyes were bleeding, due to his deep connection with Rebecca. At that moment, Glutton began to destroy the barrier, and as he prepared to attack Ray, Ray decided to release his Chronos lock. As they charged at each other, a massive cloud of dust erupted from their collision. Meanwhile, Lisa stepped into the portal. Just as Glutton shattered Ray's sword, he destroyed it completely before it could even piece itself back together. But by then, Lisa had already appeared inside the dimension. Since the two of them were once lovers, Lisa began to tell Evan that his hatred would never make him stronger than her, but he spat back that he would never stop until he killed her with his own bare hands. Activating the Dark Triad system, he drove a needle filled with serum straight into his own brain, transforming himself into a glowing, red-hot monster. The serum was a forbiddance technique that forcefully stimulates the brain and amplifies the darkest sides of human nature, temporarily expanding the engram, while causing a catastrophic overheat that turns the sorcerer into a literal monster. Yet, just as he tried to eliminate her, his hand froze instantly, and as Lisa activated Apotheosis, a massive, overwhelming energy completely consumed Evan. Lisa then revealed that she had triggered her own self-destruct technique, explaining that her engram produces a highly volatile destructive factor that forces any active technique to self-destruct. In an instant, the devastating energy ripped through his body, leaving Evan completely drained. But as he lay there, wondering if she truly was the world's strongest sorcerer, she looked down and told him that the Iceblade Sorcerer was actually the strongest of them all. She believed that if there was ever a single sorcerer capable of ruling the entire world, it would definitely be him. In other words, the Iceblade Sorcerer shall rule the world. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Ray's friends were growing completely exhausted from endlessly fighting off the waves of monsters. Yet, through the struggle, they realized they had all grown so much stronger ever since their training exercise in the Kafka forest. At that very moment, the monsters began to awaken as demons. But just as they launched their energy blasts, sharp bicycle blades shattered them instantly. Right then, Lydia and the other girls arrived, and Carla told them that they would be taking over the battle. As they charged at the demons, Carla soared into the sky, unleashing a blinding flash of lightning, obliterating the demons right in front of her. Right away, Abby extended her blades, unleashing a massive torrent of flames around her. And as she launched blazing fire dragons into the sky, She wiped out 1,000 demons all at once. When it was Carol's turn, she cast a love barrier around herself, trapping the demons in a powerful love spell. But when she released a deafening, terrible sound, it completely blew the demons away in a massive cloud of smoke, erasing them from existence. To finish them off, Lydia summoned sharp icicle blades, and combining them into one massive sword, she completely annihilated the remaining demons. But Abby quickly cast a barrier to protect them from being frozen solid. Meanwhile, Glutton began to think Ray was weak, noticing that he had only been defending himself against his attacks. But when Ray challenged him to hit him with his strongest technique, Glutton decided to unleash his full power, activating his ultimate body enhancement spell that sent Ray flying out of the smoke and crashing hard onto the ground. Seeing this, Maria began to blame Rebecca, saying she was the one who caused all this chaos. By keeping the danger she was in a secret, she believed they could have prevented things from getting this bad, and blamed her for being selfish. By hiding her true feelings, as Glutton prepared to finish Ray off, he grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. But just as he tried to devour Ray's engram, Ray activated deceleration and drove a blade straight through Glutton's foot. At that exact moment, the freezing began. In desperation, he stabbed his own hand, barely managing to force some distance between them. But as Glutton tried to finish him off with a deadly blow, his own arm began to freeze and, realizing that Ray's blade wouldn't shatter this time, Ray finally unleashed Pandora, sending the ice surging across his entire body, until he was frozen completely solid. But, completely drained of his strength, Ray collapsed to his knees, luckily managing to trigger the Chronos lock right before slipping into unconsciousness. As Rebecca rushed over to help him, Maria blocked her path, continuing her bitter rant. Blaming her sister for unleashing all this chaos, she screamed that Rebecca always had it easy, claiming she had never actually cared about anyone else, all because she was the eldest daughter. Having heard enough, Rebecca snapped and told her to shut her mouth, passionately declaring that she was willing to sacrifice her entire life for her. But furious at those words, Maria lost her temper, and slapped her right across the face. Yet, Rebecca immediately pinned her to the ground, screaming that her sister's whole life had been a lie, before slapping her back to snap her out of it. She told her she had always been a rebellious little brat, but confessed that she had always loved her as her precious little sister. As her tears fell, her sorcery eyes suddenly awakened, and her magic power began to dangerously overheat. When Ray finally woke up, he noticed the glowing orange barrier, just as Lise materialized, carrying Evan's body, and desperately pleaded with him to save Rebecca. At that very moment, Amelia and the others rushed to the scene, but Lydia warned them all to stay back from the girl. Steeling himself, Ray breached Rebecca's barrier, and as he stood before her, he softly told her how much he admired her bravery. Later that night, as Rebecca gazed up at the starry sky, having finally recovered from her overheating episode, Amelia quietly stepped up behind her, warning her to stay away from her man, and proudly claiming that they shared a special bond, and they would even be spending the night together, so she could properly thank him and appreciate his long sword. But Amelia cut in, saying she had already appreciated his sword, and had even spent an entire night with him in her bed. However, Rebecca revealed she had already accepted that Ray would have multiple women, since she believed that love always wins. Unwilling to give up, Amelia told her she would fight for the love of her life, but Rebecca countered that her own love was far stronger, and welcomed the challenge. Amelia extended her hand, declaring she wouldn't lose. As Rebecca shook her hand to accept the challenge, she vowed she wouldn't lose either. Just then, Clarice and Alyssa appeared before them, protesting that it was totally unfair, but Rebecca revealed she had more than enough room to accept them too. At that moment, Ray appeared, and as they were all overjoyed to see him, the fireworks began bursting in the sky. The following day, Ray visited Howard's grave, realizing that although he had felt lost after Howard left his life, he was able to find a normal world, one where he had people he deeply cared about, and people who cared about him in return. Howard. I made a friend. I made a friend. I made a friend.